Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new episode. And we're here to discuss the topic of the effects of machismo and how it can have a significant impact on Latinas and their ability to pursue their dreams and live fulfilling life. Machismo is deeply ingrained in many Latin American cultures and can create barriers for women, limiting their opportunities and affecting their self-esteem. Specifically, machismo can discourage Latinas from traveling, which is an important way to broaden one's horizons, gain new experiences and perspectives, and expand one's knowledge and understanding of the world. And to discuss about this topic, we're here with Alix Jurado. Alix is a psychologist and sexual educator, originally from Mexico, and she's here to discuss this topic with us. And Alix, thank you so much for your time and for being here with us to talk about this topic.
Well, thank you, Lou, for inviting me. I'm very pleased to be here.
Awesome. So, Alix, let's start by defining machismo. So, what is machismo and how, in your experience, it affects Latinas in their daily lives?
Okay, so you already say a definition of machismo, very good definition, by the way. But I think, in my own words, as I see it, machismo is all these behaviors, ideas that people have. It's not exclusively for men, because all of us, we all have machismo inside of us. Sometimes we are not aware that we have it, but we all have it in some way. So,
can you give us
yes.
some examples that sort of ways in machismo we can do it, but we are not aware of it?
Yes, of course. So, for example, maybe something that, for example, in my experience, I have learned that in my house, and my mom always say that you have to look pretty. Like you have to wear makeup. I don't know, you have to use some kind of clothes, like to look desirable, to look pretty for other people. But sometimes I don't live with my mom, for example, like many years ago, I haven't lived with my mom. And sometimes when I'm going out, I remember those things, oh, maybe I don't look that pretty, or maybe I have not put my hair in this way, or put so many makeup, like those kind of things that maybe we are sometimes not aware of, but still there.
That's true. Since we grew up with it, it's just part of us. And actually, that now that you mentioned that, I also grew up in the same way. And one of the things I was always criticized by my mom and women in my family and women in my community was the fact that I don't use makeup. So that was like something that really bothered people around me. I was like, well, I don't identify with makeup. It's not how I roll. So I'm just not going to use it. I was always pressured to do it, but I never do it. So that's true. That's always there. But since everyone does it and you grow up with it, you think it's just normal that, oh no, everyone should use makeup, or everyone have certain bodies, or women should get surgery to have bigger boobs. This all depends on, the beauty standards of the country you grew up in.
Yeah, of course. Or maybe sometimes, for example, in my country, in Mexico, it's usual that men open the door for you, or those kind of things, or they pay the count if you go to get dinner, or those kind of things. So, for example, right now I'm living in Europe, and this doesn't happen here, like no one does it. And it's like, why they don't do it? And in Mexico or in Latin America, they do it a lot, like. It's called micromachismos, which is a kind of machismo that is almost, you don't even notice that is something wrong with it.
Right, because it's just that, it's what I guess, right? So you already mentioned something about it, like those little things that men do, those little things, the micromachism, right? So my next question was how this is linked to traditional gender roles and the expectations.
I think it is very linked because you have some certain gender roles. So, for example, we as women, I think that we as women, we learn a lot of things in our life. And I'm actually doing a thesis right now about that topic, about all the things that we learn about sexuality, and so we learn a lot of things. Okay, so we have these gender roles that we have to, these rules that you have to follow, because if not, you are not like in shape for society. So it's not that they make it like you have to do it, but you have to do it. If not, you are not being good enough for society. So I
Got it.
think this is difficult because sometimes you are not comfortable with it, and but
And
you still have to do it, because if not, society is going to criticize you, as you say, like, I think for men and for women and for everyone, gender roles are like all these expectations, all these have to do things that maybe you do not agree with that at some point, but you still have to do it. Like, I
exactly.
don't know if that answered your question.
No, yeah, no, it did. And it actually reminded me of, I always go back to growing up in Venezuela. Right now, I live in the United States. I've been here for 9 years. But I remember growing up in Venezuela, and especially that I am from a small town. Over there is like your value is based on having a husband and make sure that it is a rich husband, and then you got to have kids, so you get all these ideas, and then also that make sure you look pretty, so you find the best husband. So it's like all these ideas, like everything revolves around that. And I'm pretty sure that in Mexico, in some areas, might be as well. I know last time I went into Mexico, I was exposed to that very strong masculine type of man that they open the door, they pay for everything. It's like, I got everything. So don't you worry. So they take all the weight on their shoulders, and women are there to take care of them and to look pretty, which honestly, if you're happy with that, great. For example, I wasn't in my hometown, and that's why for me immigrating was like such a breath of fresh air, because it's like, oh, there are like different ways of doing things, and I actually relate more to how of the societal expectations in the United States than in Venezuela, and specifically in my hometown.
Yeah,
So
exactly. In every culture, the gender roles are different, and
that
sometimes in, so like you say, like in small towns, but sometimes in big cities too, there
mm,
are a lot of gender roles that you have to follow. And sometimes people is not aware that they are even doing it, and sometimes we are not aware that what are the gender roles that we have learned in our life. And maybe that is something to question, like, what have I learned in my life?
that's true. That's
Do
true.
I agree with that or not?
Exactly. No, that's true. Very important. Just to question. Just because everyone does something doesn't mean it is normal. If you don't want to do it or you want to do it, maybe think about it. The other day, I even heard a podcast that this guy was advising that if you shower, even think about why you shower. Like so.
Don't do it automatically.
Exactly. So we should definitely question everything for sure. So, Alex, and now that we touch up the gender role part, in your experience, how do you think machismo can limit women's opportunities? And also, how does this affect their self-esteem?
Okay, so I think machismo affects women in a lot of ways. So, for example, in my experience, I'm a psychotherapist, and I see a lot of women in my consultation. And what I see from my experience is that sometimes they normalize things. So, for
Mm,
example, when you are a victim of violence, for example, maybe you are not aware of it is violence because it's so normalized in your culture sometimes that you are not even aware of it. So when I mention it, like, this is violence, and they are like, oh, is it? Like I haven't seen it that way, you know, but when they see it, and when you name it as what it is,
They become
yeah,
aware of that
they
it is
become aware of
violence.
it. Yes, and maybe they don't know what to do with that. That's the work of a psychotherapist, you know, like to
Yeah.
teach them how to do it. But yeah, for example, I say violence, but I think a lot of things, you know, like you mentioned self-esteem. So for example, I know this doesn't happen in the United States as much as in Latin America, but maybe like piropos, you know, like,
Oh,
or
catcalling.
catcalling or sexual harassment. You know, like you are walking down the street, and then some guy is looking at you, like, you know, like that kind of things, or they say things to you just because you're a woman. And it's like, you don't have the right to say anything to me, you know, like they don't do it with men, for example, you know, because they are going to get a reaction. But
Right.
with women, they think like it's normalized, you know, like to say things to women, or to criticize, or to look at them like if they were a subject, you know, like you can own. But we are
For
not.
sure.
We are a person, you know, like.
Yeah, we're individuals as well, just as men are, of course. Like, this conversation is just bringing me so many memories from when I used to live in Venezuela. And I don't know, for some reason now when I go visit, I don't know if it is something different about the way I look, or how I look at them, or how high my self-esteem is now and how confident I am now. But I don't experience catcalling as I used to before. And maybe because now that I was exposed to a different society and different way of doing things, I have zero tolerance for those behaviors. And actually, when I travel to Latin America, it doesn't happen to me. But when I used to live there, it was all the time, like the whistling and like, hey, like all the catcalling. And also, growing up, I was, also exposed to women that were in very toxic relationship, and they will always use the argument of like, oh no, that's how he loves me. And it's like, well, I don't think that that's love. But that's a way deeper topic. But
As you said, I think it's because you are aware of it, you know, like
yeah.
you can name it. And now that you have worked with your self-esteem and something, and I think it affects self-esteem. Because if you are always being, if you are walking down the street and you feel insecure, if you feel like some people is talking to you or saying things to you and you don't feel comfortable, well, you are going to be afraid of going
Yeah.
out, you know, and that obviously that affects your self-esteem. And maybe sometimes you don't have to go outside. Sometimes in your house they are being machistas, you know, like sometimes the machism is in the family. So for example, I'll give you an example of my family now. So for example, we are two brothers and I'm the only woman in my house. So when we are in the house, my mom is like, oh, you wash the dishes. And I'm like, why me? You know, like there are three people here. Why me? And she's like, because, just because, you know, like, and I'm like, no, like, because I'm a woman, that's what I have to do. Like, they can do it on their own, you know, like, they have
Yeah.
hands, they can do it. And yeah, sometimes, so they don't do it no more because I have questioned this in my house. So
Mm.
but they used to do it, and sometimes they are aware, like, oh yeah, I say that to you, that is not right, you know, like, but because I have questioned it, and but sometimes they still doing it unconsciously, you know, like they are not even aware of it, like serve the food or do the food or whatever. No.
So you question them, and then you challenge them, and then they became aware of it. That's
Yeah.
that's a really good way to put it. Um, yeah. So also, what do you think is the relationship, Alex, between self-esteem and taking risk?
Okay, so I think you don't take risks if you don't have a good self-esteem, because you are going to be too afraid and you are not going to be confident about yourself.
Mm,
And I think that's a high point in self-esteem. You have to be confident about yourself. You have to believe that you can do it. And if you don't believe that, if you have enough self-esteem to believe those things, I don't think you are going to make risk. Or at least
mm,
that's what I have seen, for example, in patients that have low self-esteem. They don't believe in themselves. They think they are not capable of doing things. Sometimes not even simple things.
right.
Obviously, take risks is not even on the table, like.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, I'm asking you this because I remember again my last trip to Mexico. I met this woman that she couldn't even look anyone on the eye, and she was always looking down, and like I could just tell that she was like feeling less than everyone. And I tried to talk to her, but she wouldn't talk to me back. And then I thought that I have this podcast and this idea that women should go out and travel the world on their own terms. But then there is also these other women that cannot even look at other people in the eye. So I was like, oh, but yeah, it's yeah, that was
Good.
an eye-opening moment. It was like, wow, there's in some countries there's a lot to do, and there are many factors, of course, that go into it. Which leads me to the next question, Alex. How do you think travel is important, and how it can help women broaden their horizons?
Okay, I think traveling is important because one, you have fun, a lot of fun when you're traveling, but also you face a lot of problems because that you have to resolve by yourself, but if you're traveling alone, like there's no one else that can help you, and you have to figure it out. And that I think it helps in believing in yourself, what we were
Mm,
talking before, because you see that you are capable of doing it, like you don't need anyone else to figure it out for you. And so I think travel is important because it helps you to see new experiences that you can learn a lot of from traveling, like I have learned a lot when I travel, because I meet a lot of people, I see a lot of cultures, I see a lot of ways of behaviors, like that's maybe because I'm a psychologist and I'm always like thinking about their behaviors. I don't know, but but sometimes it's really different, and sometimes you can learn something from other people, or some experience of other people can share to you. So I think travel, of course, gives you a lot of new ways of seeing the world and seeing life in general, I think. And I think for women, this can help. I think it increases your self-esteem, as I say before, because you have to resolve things and you have to do a lot of things by your own. So that helps you with your confidence in yourself. When you do it, you can be aware of, oh, I did
How?
this,
Yeah. Okay. So when you travel specifically alone, it increases your self-esteem because
Yeah.
you realize first you are responsible for yourself. There's no one else that is responsible for you. And I think this applies to every aspect of life, not only solo travel. But and then also once you realize or start doing those things by yourself, you start gaining confidence because you become aware of how capable you are. Is that right?
Yes, yes, yes. You said it
Okay.
perfectly.
Okay. Okay, got it. That's why also like one of the main things what I always advocate for women to solo travel. And I know there are some women that travel is not even on the table. But I always say take at least one day trip or one small road trip and just do it on your own. And from there, start expanding your comfort zone and start increasing your confidence. Because once you you realize that you were capable to do that, you can only go up from there. And
Yes, sure.
yeah.
And sometimes it's like even smaller things, like go and have dinner with yourself. You don't need anyone else to have dinner, no? Or go get a coffee by yourself and be with yourself. Sometimes it's uncomfortable to be with yourself, and sometimes you don't spend that time with your own self. Like it's going to be difficult to travel alone.
That's true. That's
I
true.
think.
So you can even start with those primary steps, or having dinner with yourself,
Yeah.
enjoying time with yourself. Yeah, no, that's true. And just as a spoiler, once you enjoy spending time with yourself, there's no way back. You're like, so Alex, how do you think, and if you can give us some examples, that'd be great. But in your experience and from your studies as well, what do you think are the societal pressures and the stereotypes that discourage Latinas from traveling?
I think so. For example, in Latin America, sometimes it's dangerous to travel by yourself. So, for example, in my country, in Mexico, uh,
Yeah.
you are afraid of traveling by yourself because you always thinking that something can happen to you, and it's not fake to have this fear, because it's real. Like 11 women are killed every day in Mexico, like
Wow.
it doesn't matter in which part of Mexico do you live or do you travel to, you are always in risk, So I think that is one thing that in my experience, for example, on my own, like I travel a lot and I travel alone also in Mexico or in other Latin America countries. But so, for example, that fear. So, for example, I don't have that fear in the US or in Europe, like you don't have that fear. You are more secure. Like nothing will happen to you, or it's more less probable that
Right.
something can happen to you. But in insecure countries, like I think it's really dangerous sometimes to travel by yourself, and maybe sometimes you are afraid of traveling by yourself. Of course you can take care and you can maybe avoid going to some places that are dangerous, but I have heard a lot like this fear is something that stops you for traveling by yourself, and you feel more secure when you travel with your family or with friends or with men, like because
Yeah.
you feel more secure.
That's
I
true.
think that is one thing.
No, that's true. And well, I always say, well, don't watch the news, don't watch the news. But something that is very prevalent in Latin America is that everyone talks about it. It doesn't matter if you don't watch the news, but your family will tell you, your friends will tell you, and they will discourage you also from taking a trip. As I was mentioning to you this story that I was hanging out with some girls from Mexico not too long ago, and they recently came to the United States from Mexico, and they were talking about all these crime towards women, but in a very normal way, just if they were like describing something very like simple or unimportant. And I was like, what? I was traumatized just from their stories. It's like, that is so unacceptable. And how can you guys be like so chill about it? So yeah, also
Yeah,
because, but yeah, because very part of the culture, everyone talks about it, and it's unavoidable to feel fear for sure.
yeah, I think that's one thing. And other thing is that if we go back to gender roles, some women are married or some women have kids. So it's not only that you have to work one job. Like, for example, if I'm a psychologist, but I'm also a wife and I'm also a mother, I have three jobs. I don't only have one job, like because I have
Right.
to work, I have to do psychotherapies, but I have to go back to the house and maybe look for my husband or whatever, or the house or cleaning or doing food or whatever. And also, if I have kids, I have to take care of the kids. Like, I'm not saying that this happens in all of the families. I hope not, but it's really usual. Like, so when do you find a space to travel if you are that busy all day long?
Right.
Like, and sometimes you feel guilty if you go some days by yourself and then you leave all these persons, by themselves, that maybe they don't know what to do by themselves. So I don't
That's
know, maybe
true.
that's something like what I have heard about married women or women that are moms, is that they don't travel by themselves. They travel with the husband or with the kids, but they don't usually go by themselves to any places, not even traveling, but not even to the supermarket or have dinner or
Wow.
something, because they are too busy.
That's true. That's true. And definitely, if you when you have a family and you have different priorities, travel, especially solo travel, can be challenging and it can be a luxury. And I think that goes linked to that is also the shame of doing it, because I know that there can be some judgment around the fact that you went alone without your kids and without your husband and without your family. So that I think that also that shame could stop women as well from go traveling, and especially on their
Yeah,
own.
yeah, that's true. And because they are always going to be criticizing the woman, no? They are not
Mm.
going to be criticizing if the man, for example, goes by himself to the beach, but they are going to criticize woman like, how dare you, like leaving your family alone, how dare you?
Yes, yes, of course. And Alex, so what advice would you give to a woman that wants to start to travel, but it's just held back by all these expectations and societal roles and um, yeah.
Maybe what I will say is that you have to believe in yourself, and you have to believe that you are capable of doing things by your own. And you have to believe more in your capacities, because sometimes we are not aware of how capable we are of doing things until we do it. So if you don't do it, how would you know? Like, so maybe what I will say is to be more confident about ourselves. And once we are more confident about ourselves, that will increase our self-esteem, as we mentioned before. And maybe that will help to gain more confidence and then go travel by themselves.
Got it.
Mhm.
And do you think it will be helpful that they start doing little things, as we mentioned before, to start increasing their
Yes.
self-esteem and like gathering evidence like, hey, I am actually capable of doing this and more?
Yes, of course. Maybe like we mentioned, you can start with little things, even getting a dinner by yourself, going to a restaurant by yourself, going to the movie theater by yourself, or going shopping by yourself, or get a coffee and spend some time with yourself, and maybe that will help you. And maybe, as you said, and I love it what you say, like even in your own city, there are museums, there are like cultural things that you can do in your own, like maybe sometimes I go to museums by myself. I don't ask anyone, because I want to go and see art by myself, and I spend some hours like looking at the paintings and everything. And it's like I spend time with myself and I enjoy it, So maybe one advice that I will give is that find something in your hometown or wherever you are living, and find something that maybe you can do it yourself, maybe a concert, maybe a museum, maybe a cultural activity, or maybe a trip, like to downtown and maybe explore something. I don't know, like you
Yeah,
can start with those little things, and maybe you don't have to go outside to do those things, like you can do it in your own city to
that's
start,
true.
and then maybe later you can go see what the world have to offer you, and there are a lot of things that you can see.
That's true. That's true. Thank you so much for offering that advice. And Alix, what are some benefits of breaking away from these expectations and actually pursuing one's dreams?
So, what are the benefits? I think, as we mentioned, a lot of self-esteem, but yeah, it's true. Like once you, it's not easy, to break those stereotypical roles and those things that you have learned for a lot of years in your life, and you have hear them like a lot of times, and it's not easy even to question them. But I think you have to question, like I question a lot of things and it's not easy, because sometimes I remember one day I told a friend like, I wish I was not feminist because now I question a lot of things that before I haven't questioned. Maybe I was more comfortable before, and then he say like, were you? And I'm like, no, that's not true. No, I was not more comfortable. No, that's not true. But once you see it, like as you say, that there's no way back. It's really good to question those things, and once you do it, the benefits of breaking these stereotypes and don't follow the rules that you are, it's not something you have to do. Like if you choose to, it's great,
Yeah.
but it's not something that you have to do. If you choose to not wear makeup, it's great because you choose it, and if I use makeup, but not because everyone told me that I have to use makeup, maybe sometimes when I feel alike, I use makeup, and sometimes I don't, but it's something that I'm choosing. It's not something that I have to, like,
Right.
every day.
Right. That's the beautiful thing about being a human, no? We have the free will to choose. And then also, yeah, what you mentioned about it's not easy. It's not easy to like break from those expectations and doing things differently because it takes a lot of energy. It takes that for sure takes a lot of energy. Because
Yes, and putting some boundaries with people, it's tiring,
it is
because
tiring.
you have to explain to people why you are saying that, and sometimes you are questioned, like, why are you doing this different, and but I think the benefits, like, there's no way back, as you say, like, once you break these stereotypes, once you question them, and you start seeing different options of how to behave in a different way, and you feel more comfortable with it. If you're being more comfortable with those behaviors, breaking these stereotypes, well,
Yeah.
it's what matters,
Exactly. Yeah, as long as you're happy with it. Either if you decide to break away from them or stay with them or even adopt them, because I know from some women from the United States, for example, they go to Latin America and they actually enjoy those stereotypes. So it's something that they chose, and that's again the beautiful thing. We're all individuals, and we have the free will to choose what is best for us.
Yeah.
So thank Alix. Well, thank you so much for everything you share with us. So we talk about machism. You share with us a definition of that, how it is linked to traditional gender roles, how it affects and limit women's opportunity, also how it can affect Latinas' desire to travel, like tips on how we can overcome it. So thank you so much. And Alix, for anyone that is listening to this that wants to get in contact with you, where can they find you?
Or you can find me in Facebook, and my Facebook is psicóloga Alix Jurado. And on Instagram, you can find me as Psych Alix Jurado, Psych as in
Yeah.
psychologist, and Alix Jurado. And well, I also recommend therapy because where I have learned to question those stereotypes and those gender roles and everything, where I have learned more, I think is in therapy, because
Mm.
it moves you things, Once you start this deconstruction process about questioning and everything, it brings you a lot of insecurities, fears, a lot of feelings, like you don't have to go there by yourself. Sometimes when you have a therapist is really helpful.
That's for sure. Yeah, I'm there with you on that. Therapy for sure. It's even therapy will help you question, like question and then manage all those feelings that will come up in the process, for sure. So thank you so much, Alix, and I will make sure to leave the link to all your social media and website on the show notes.
Thank you so much to you for inviting me, Lou. It was my pleasure.